Change Your POV podcast is about building confidence in your own beliefs, morals, and opinions while challenging yourself to be open, humble, and curious about things that you are unfamiliar with, don't have experience in, or straight up disagree with.
We will explore concepts and ideas that will challenge you physically, mentally, and spiritually. Personal introspection is among the greatest skill sets you will learn to hone. The foundation of your success is rooted in trust, gratitude, and forgiveness.
So join us as we explore things that we are unfamiliar with, strengthen things that we are, and are always challenging ourselves to become better.
Change Your POV podcast, where perspective is the vantage point of success.
Hello, folks. Some of you may have forgotten my voice by now, but this is Eddie Lazary, and today I'm joined with none other than Bennett and Eddie. How long has it been since we've recorded a show?
Bennett and Eddie.
It's been a long while, like so long we almost forgot
man.
how to do
it's
this.
It's been a while.
It is, but it was not easy to get everything up this morning.
Well, it's like riding a bike, you know.
Like getting up at 6 on a Saturday morning was easier than
shit.
trying to figure out.
No, you're right.
Again. It is. So welcome back, and I don't know how many.
Yep,
it is
kind of crazy.
Like, you know how podcasts do seasons? You know, they get like a certain number of episodes, and then they kind of take a little break. I think let's talk really quick about why we took a break from the show for so long, even to begin with. We never really announced it. We never really said anything on the show. We just kind of dropped off the face of the earth without any explanation.
Well, I mean, do you want the real story,
like
as
real as
straight up?
It.
Why
and,
exactly?
I think we owe that.
What the nail in the coffin was.
True. That
obviously
true.
not the coffin. Maybe not the coffin, because we're not dead and we're still here talking to each other. So
okay. Yep.
I mean, we can go into the big, long, drawn out thing, but I'm just going to peel the Band-Aid off. Is basically we were getting sued. Yeah, and this is the second time in business this has happened to me. We're getting sued, and you know, it's so
for keeping it real,
ridiculous, but and careless on our part, right? Keeping it real, but the infraction upon us was ridiculous. And what it comes down to is it's basically a company looking to profit off of the ignorance of people doing business with laws that are frankly somewhat outdated, but there for a reason, because it protects people's property, right? Intellectual property and things like that. And, but again, we can't feign ignorance because that's just naive, right? And we used someone else's picture.
Like a form of insurance fraud.
It was unknowing.
Done the legal way. Do you know what I mean? Like, let me explain. So these companies out there, they put these images out on the interwebs, right? And they tag them somehow so they're searchable by, like, I'm sure a lot of people out there are familiar with AI, or artificial intelligence, or bot, automated technology, that goes and kind of search things automatically. And so anyway, they create these images and they put them out on the interwebs and they tag them in such a way graphically where search engines can run constantly and search other websites and look for the digital footprint or fingerprint or signature of these images, right? And if they find these images on a website or being used in some way, then they basically go after them and try to get them to pay, fees. When I first got contacted, it was a cease and desist letter, email actually actually I got a hard copy mail, and then I also got an email, and it was a cease and desist, and it was from an attorney's office on behalf of the quote owners of this image, and it was a ridiculous image too. But anyway, and we used a lot of graphics in the 3 years we were doing podcasting. Every single episode had its own artwork, and we really did our best to try to use copyright free images. And
well, but see, the most nefarious part of this
right.
is that the image that you used was supposedly copyright free.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the most nefarious part. And if you do internet searches and look for copyright free images, right? Again, the onus is still put on us, but this came from a place where copyright free, it stated copyright free.
Yep.
So who knew? Yeah. So I guess what you're doing is you're taking it into your own hands to believe whether or not the website that is giving you said free image is doing what we're doing. So you think that there's layers of checks and balances, but sometimes things slip through. And this has happened to many other
the lawyer said in the email. They said, all you have to do is contact
especially when you're trying to do it on a shoestring budget.
They were assuming that Change Your POV was like a registered, licensed business, and so the lawyer said is, it's just, this happens all the time. It's not a big deal. A lot of people just are unaware. All you got to do is contact your insurance provider and pay your deductible, and then put us in contact with your insurance company, and they will pay us the balance due. So basically they were banking on the fact that we had liability insurance as a company, and then we were just going to pay whatever that deductible would be, and then our insurance company would pay out what it was like $3,500 they were looking for or something.
Right.
And I was just like, well, first of all, we're not
a lot. It was
this. This is kind of a side gig hobby that we're scratching together on the weekends to try to help provide value to our listeners. And I don't have $3,500 to give you for some image.
And frankly, your picture is not worth $3,500. It's worth like $5. And if it had been $5, gladly we would have paid it. We were willing to pay another fee, but they were not willing to accept that for it. And so we had talked to a friend of ours too.
It's a scam, but it was a legitimate
basically it came
scam.
down to the fact that it's like a scam. And
but they literally do this, right? They get their images out there in hopes that people
it's a totally
will
legitimate
use them,
scam, right?
Like I did, and then pay the whatever, because in any large company,
and then freak out
$3,000. Oops, I'm sorry. Here's $3,000. Is no big deal, right? But for us, it's like, no thanks. I'm not. So we ended up taking, and that's the thing is, we had so many images out there on the website. I had no idea what other images might be, just. And that's the thing about it is the image that we used it like for an episode that was almost 2 years old, right? It wasn't like a recent image that we used. It was like one of our earlier images that we used. So now I'm like, I got probably thousands of images that we've used over the course of the podcast on the website and out on the internet and everywhere. And I had no idea which ones. So we ended up taking the entire website down. So if you go to changeyourpov.com, you won't see nothing. It's like, unreturnable. So I still have the domain. I can create them, but we decided if we were going to come back and do this, we were going to use no images for our artwork for our episodes, and we're just going to keep it just straight vanilla.
And unless we do, yeah, and that's sort of the thing. I mean, we'll use images for stuff, but they're images that have been vetted thoroughly. And we use certain tools that now have tons of, we will be using certain tools that
absolutely.
have
And that's
tons
the
of
thing
stock
is
photos
lesson
that
out there
are
for
paid
anybody
for already, and
doing this type of work.
yada yada
If
yada.
you use an image,
meaning
even
Canva,
if it's from a
right?
a service that you're paying for, like an image site or whatever, be sure that you know where you got those images and have a way to prove that you have paid for them. Yeah.
Well, now with what's cool with Canva is now
I
they
just
have,
saw an article recently.
They
like
bought
yesterday,
Pexel,
several articles out there
and
about how
Pictobay
Canva was had a huge data breach. Did you see that? Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, I just got an email. I sent it to you too. Yeah, but luckily we don't have our paid stuff under that
really?
same moniker.
Oh, what
so
did
they
take?
can take Change Your POV's stuff because they actually breached Change Your POV. Yeah. Nothing. I mean, well, they have our account.
Dang. Okay.
So what I was sending you that email for is for you, so you
God.
can change your passwords.
Wow. Oh, man.
Yeah. So I sent that. I just literally sent that to you this morning, like 10 minutes before we got on with each other.
Kind
of funny.
I did,
kind of funny.
right?
So yeah, we just had to change thing. There's no. You don't have any pay information in there either.
A couple of months ago.
I guess technically you do.
I was on business travel and I came back.
And I don't know. But either way.
At the airport, it was like midnight. And all of a sudden, I look at my bank account, and my bank account is like in the overdraft. It's negative. It's a separate. It's not my main bank account. It's one that I use just to kind of put some money in when I'm traveling, right?
Right.
In case I lose the card or whatever, I don't like to have my main bank account because I've done that before and I've had to shut down my debit card and it have no access to money and so my backup's in the negative and I'm like, what the hell? And I look at my phone.
But your backup, now your backup is in the negative.
There was this charge from Canva that put me in the negative, and I'm like, oh hell no, I didn't, so. I got a hold of my bank and I told them that I need to put a hold on that charge and it was not real. And they said, well, there's nothing we could do about it until it's posted. It was just pending. And they told me that I had to get a hold of Canva. So of course Canva wasn't open at midnight. So I had to wait for the next day. I called Canva. And of course there's nowhere you can call Canva. They don't have a customer service phone number. So all you can do is like text them, email them, and it goes to like Zendesk, which is an outsource call center company. And oh my God, I was raving.
Text or email.
So I finally get a hold of somebody. I'm like, this is absolutely unacceptable. Actually, the only way I was able to get a hold of somebody was I had to Facebook message them on their Facebook page and just totally blow them up on social media in order to get their attention. And I'm like, this is absolutely ridiculous. I did not charge because I tried to go onto my account in Canva and it would not let me delete my pay information, my credit card. Very big issue. So I couldn't delete my account.
Yeah, there's certain things with Canva. It's a great tool, but there's certain things.
It was set on like a monthly
with.
recurring, and I couldn't delete that either. So it was going to take out like $160 every month, and I couldn't stop it. I'm like, no. I'm like, that's stupid. So.
Yeah, exactly. There's got to be, right. It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be a way, and this is why, again,
I don't
in
mind
other
you outsource
businesses,
your customer service,
is
but
quite
as long as there's a way to get a hold of you,
folks.
and
Like, you got to have.
there's got to be a way to remove your account information. If I want to not pay you, I want to be able to have that option to not pay you, right? Or cancel my account. Because what ended up happening is, I would add you. I had you, Bennett. Jeff, Dwayne, and Andrew added as contributors to the Canva page, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's an issue I'm running into now, getting you, because I wanted to start fresh.
Right.
Right.
And if you have me
the
on your
problem
account,
that we're running into at this point is that
you end up paying per person.
I can't get you off my account.
No, right, exactly. I could. That was my problem. I couldn't delete you guys from the account.
Right, and there's no way to
delete my account. I couldn't remove
my to pull it off. Exactly.
I was in like a monthly reoccurring jail with Canva, and I couldn't even do that. Nope.
Jail with Canva.
I tried to do.
It's either that or shut down your account, so you can or pause your account. You wouldn't even let you pause it.
I ended up going on social media, and on my own social media and tagging Canva, and I was just blowing them up socially, and got their attention. And all of a sudden, all these people started coming out of the woodwork. Basically saying that the same thing had happened to them, that they were being charged erroneously and is unacceptable. So it wasn't just me, it was happening to a lot of people. So it sounds to me like they made enough money from everybody out there that they were able to now acquire who? All right. Well, congratulations, Canva.
Pexel and Pictobay, I think is what it. Which are really good. I mean, like Pexel's one of the sites that people go to a lot, but there was again with Pexel and Pictobay, I think that was like a breeding ground for a lot of this legal stuff that we were talking about earlier. Yeah. Is that they were like a clearinghouse for that shit. So who knows? It makes you, pause and really look at, have some of these companies gotten their act together? I mean, a lot of them are startup, and there's things that fall through the cracks. There just is. I mean, and as companies get mature, that's the thing, usually they're better. Like Canva from when it started though now,
problem with Canva
it's completely different.
My money and not being able to shut the accounts off. Like other than that, like I love Canva. I love the ease of use. I love the quality and the utility and everything that you're able to do. Like I still use the hell out of it, but man, I'm definitely not gonna pay for. The reason I had my account linked to it is because on occasion I'd find something that I want to, pay $1 for a particular image or something to kind of spice up a graphic that I'm working on, and I didn't mind spending. It's kind of like Apple iTunes, right? I don't go hog wild, but on occasion I'll buy a song for $3 here or a game for $2.99 there or something like that, and that's kind of what I was doing with Canva too, but not anymore. I will absolutely only use the free features from Canva as long as they're still free, and I absolutely will not link any payment. Credit cards or anything to my account ever again. Not on Canva, unfortunately. It is because at the end of the day, any business like that, it's a penny's business. It really is.
That is unfortunate.
You're not going to make money. You're not going to make as much money on like a $60 a month subscription fee as you would if people had the ease and ability of connecting a credit card and just paying for a $2 or $1 image here and there, because over time those small purchases, they're incremental, and so they don't they're easier. It's easier to spend incrementally than it is to cut out like $60 or $100 a month on a service like that. So I think they're going to end up losing business because a lot of people are realizing that there's a a breach in their security in terms of account information. And I don't think people are going to be, like me, not going to be connecting their credit cards to that shit anymore.
Right. Well, plus, remember when we tried to merge our accounts so we could share stuff? That all the bugs weren't out of that either. So I mean, and that was difficult. So who knows? Maybe people listening have other tools that they use and they would like to let us know about. I mean, I do. I use Canva literally every day. But that's because of ease of use, and it's easy to make Instagram posts. It's easy to make Facebook graphics with, and I use the free features. Plus, I've got it. Again, I think you and I aren't going to be using a lot of it because we're vanilla, as we calling it. We're vanilla everything down to literally like black, green, white, change your POV, boom, boom, boom. And then like even posts that we make will be done with like in black and white. Whether it, like, I know it's one of the things like a black background with white font, and we have to just figure out the font that we want to use. I know we had talked about that. So it's more about message than the beauty of the post necessarily.
We're not.
I guess you got to have one or the other. It's nice to have both sometimes, but
it's all good, man. I think it was just more of a because I'm a kind of an artistic kind of guy, so I found a lot of pleasure in creating images, and it kind of satisfied that creativeness in me, which podcasting also does. So I'm happy. It's all good. So let's get into really quick. You and I talked about this offline, but we're now recording it. But so we we've been doing this for almost 4 years now, which is it's a good amount of time to be podcasting, hundreds of episodes. Yeah, well, especially with the help of the other guys in when we did the Change Your POV podcast network. So that's not coming back. So Dwayne's now off and he's got his own show, which is great. He's continuing on with Headspace and Timing, and Jeff's he's doing some different things on different shows that he records with, and I don't know if Andrew's doing any more recording or not, but he seems to be he seems to have his hands full with his youngin. Yeah. So this isn't going to be, when I say we're coming back, we're not coming back as Change Your POV podcast
family
per se. We're just coming back as Change Your POV, and we talked about potentially doing a Motivation Monday and then just a regular show. But our regular show it's not even regular because it's going to be different than what we were doing before, right? Mm-hmm. So describe
not too different though.
I mean,
it's where, frankly, the industry is going. Let's be honest. I should say, because, well, it's just going to be long form. So it's literally, could be as much as a 3-hour episode. It just depends. It could be 45 minutes or it could be an hour. We're not limiting ourselves. Like before, we kind of ran on it was loose, but yet it was stringent in the fact that we actually we wanted to keep things under an hour because there's a lot of podcast experts, right? And they all have, frankly, what they are is, I understand you have data, and data doesn't really lie, but the sweet spot for podcast, at least at that time, which was, I'd say 2 years ago when we were really like at the height of this, right, was 26 minutes. And they had gotten that. What that is, though, it wasn't actual podcast listening numbers. That's average commute. So people are like, all right, so make it so people can listen to your episode from beginning to end in under 26 minutes or 30 minutes. Because people will sit in their car and listen to the end of an episode. Yeah. So we kind of went with that, but we were like, no, but what we were always fighting against is no, because in 26 minutes you get nothing. There's no message. They're not. Everything's rushed. It's like everything is cookie cutter, vanilla crap. So we're taking our cues from people like Jordan Peterson. That's part of a story I'll tell you in a second. But Joe Rogan, Jocko Willink, guys like that, who just kind of free flow. Like they know what they have and they're just going to go with it. And it could be an hour, it could be 3. I'm not saying we're going to be like them, because who the hell could be? What I'm saying is that that's the way that our hearts have always wanted to be in this business, is just sitting here bullshitting in a mic with, whether it's each other, talking about books, the news, whatever strikes our fancy that day, or talking to a guest who there's no restrictions upon. Like, we don't have canned questions that we're like, hey, so how did you make this, platform? How did you use Spotify to enhance your, what you're doing with your online store? I'm never going to ask that question. I mean, I might, I guess, in theory that could come up, but that's not what we're trying for. We're trying to have an organic, authentic conversation with people to make people realize and think about life, introspection, changing your point of view, hence the name of the freaking show, right? Perspective, mindfulness, whatever happens to come up. And guests will not just be veteran entrepreneurs. There'll be people from a broad swath of life, tribe, color, race, creed, right? That's kind of what it is that we wanted to open this up to the world, not just the veteran community. And kind of oh God, I hate using this phrase, but I don't know of a better one. Bridging that gap between veterans and civilians, and saying, hey, we can exist in this world, because
so you bring up a good point. I want to kind of touch on a little bit
it's
deeper,
not two separate worlds. That's just
so
people
I think
tribing
in the 3 years
themselves out.
Prior with Change Your POV, if you listen to our show from the very beginning all the way to now, you'll notice that there was quite a bit of a change in terms of who we were trying to reach from an audience. Like, we were always thinking about audience and who we were reaching and all that. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Right. Right. And I think
because they always say this, you have to have an avatar for who listens to your show.
Calls and discussions where we actually were trying to draw out and develop what our avatar would look like that's listening to the show. And I think, not to make light of that, I think there's some good uses to that. Mm-hmm.
Of course, there is.
I think if you're selling a product, like
to that.
Like what's that lady's name?
I
like the creator of Spanx.
But damn, right? Bro.
Yeah, so anytime I listen to somebody talk about creating an avatar, that's one of the examples that comes up is Sarah Blakely and Spanx. However, if you actually listen to her story, she didn't create Spanx because she was trying to cater to a make-believe avatar. She created Spanx because it was a solution to her own problem, right? She was tired of panty lines or whatever, and so it was a combination of she wanted some underwear that were comfortable, but the comfortable underwear left panty lines, and she didn't want panty lines, so she combined the two desires: comfortable underwear with no panty lines, right? Hence, she created Spanx, and it ended up being like you too. Yeah, I know, me too.
God, I fucking hate panty lines.
Creating this as a solution to her own problem.
I hate panty lines so much.
What do you know? There's other people in the world out there like us that also have the same problem and saw value in her product, and now she's a multimillionaire. You know what I mean? It is.
Right. And her story is amazing. I love her. I love her. And you go through this with the company that you work for.
Yeah, absolutely.
In procurement, where sourcing things can be a fucking nightmare. Right. So, I mean, I don't want to go off on this tangent, but I'm running into with the company that I own. Trying to find somebody to make something for you, it's tough. It can be tough. And that's, I think, where you hit the nail on the head is what's the saying? The niches. The riches are in the niches.
No,
and that is true. Especially when it comes to products.
Well, I get, but
it's
a service in that
it's
something that is consumed by an audience.
It's a brand. This is a brand.
You're not paying for it. It's not a product.
Service.
We're not showing up at your door and delivering, sexy voices on your doorstep, right? Unless Bennett shows up and is like delivers you a pizza or something.
Goddamn, they're sexy.
But how many times you've had people tell you that?
I don't know, man. I listen to my voice a lot, and I don't hear it. I don't hear the sexy, but thousands. But that's not the point. That's not the point. And I'm not saying this like an ego or whatever. I don't see it. It's just like I guess this is where the real comes out. Holy shit. It's just like I never look at a dude and go, damn, that's a good looking dude. I mean, I'll say like I could see why he was attractive, but men to me, like this is just saying, just because thousands of women say this dude's hot, if you don't look at him and say he's hot or think he's hot, he's not fucking hot. Yeah. He might be hot to a million people, but he's not hot. I listen to my voice and I go, damn. I don't see why people. I don't hear it. Because you don't see your voice. I don't hear it. I just don't. I wouldn't go, oh yeah, that's sexy. I'd say more like that dude yells.
That's like when you listen to Leif Babin, which is the
and his voice is fucked up.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh yeah, Leif's got a voice. He's got a very similar thing, and that's because he's yelling his ass off at people for years. Even Jocko's voice. Jocko's is like
Jocko's.
He's got like a velvety
intimidation is in his looks. Leif is in his voice.
Like it's not gravelly.
It's like Jocko. He says on his podcast, he's like everybody. He goes, "I know I look like a serial killer."
Oh
I know.
Shit. Yeah. Yes.
So for those that are,
I don't know, man,
who we're talking about.
I know I look like a serial killer. And this is why I don't have my head shaved either. Remember how like some of our older
I like it
promo photos and how my head shaved. Mm-hmm. My wife she like forbids me now. Don't ever. Well, here's the problem. When I'm down, when my weight's down,
Gomer Pyle and
when I'm fat,
Jacket.
I just look like a pedophile or something. It's bad.
I can picture you right now with your shorts around your ankle, sucking your thumb, running behind formation.
Just fat body, donut eating, nasty. Oh, Jesus, dude. Yeah. And right now I'm kind of in there. I mean, I'm on my way back down, and this is something else that we'll talk about throughout this. Is part of this thing too is I want to talk about my journey through hell and back with weight loss and stuff. And right now I got up to a point where I was like 300 plus pounds, 320 something odd pounds. Mm-hmm. I'm down to like 280 now, which is awesome, but fuck, man. And you've been there with me along it. And that's a story that we want to tell. We would have never really told that on the last show. I mean, maybe, but we would have made this big like and we kind of did with some stuff, right? Like
wave top,
tried some challenges, but everything felt so like fucking fake. I don't know. It was very surface.
That's what's different about this show. We're
wave top and very produced.
And also,
because we plan on not editing shit
kind of throwing the
out of
Avatar
these
out the moving car at 60 miles an hour. Tuck and roll, bitch. I'm saying. We're like we don't really care about an avatar, or we're trying to cater to a specific. That's the thing, right?
Tuck and roll, or you're fucked.
You kind of already hit it earlier, and that is, we're not trying to talk to veterans. We're not trying to talk to non-veterans. We're not trying to talk to really anyone out there. We're just talking to ourselves. And if you find value in this and entertaining, then you'll go along with us on a ride. Otherwise, you'll find another podcast to listen to, and we totally respect that. There's literally hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there that we're, quote, competing with. But at the end of the day, this isn't what you and I do for income. We don't do this to make money. So we both have jobs that we use to pay our bills with. So this is totally, on the side. Now, am I saying that we wouldn't like to turn this into some way to monetize and make a little bit extra somehow to defer the cost of this? But right. But that's about it. Right.
We'd like it to at least pay for itself, but again, that's not our goal. I mean, you'll know, and we'll be like, hey, here's some shameless product placement. By the way, go out and buy our book, Month of Motivation, on Amazon. Shameless product placement. There it is.
Yep.
And Month of Motivation, for those that don't know, is based upon
we're going to do. We're just
our Motivation Mondays.
Share it, drop it,
from the podcast.
We're not
in book
hound
form.
on it like the last.
There you go.
The previous episodes of Change Your POV. We would spend a lot of time in promotions and product placement, and it was just sure.
Putting together all kinds of crap. I mean, we'll still have like strategic partnerships with certain companies, mainly. And this is one of those things where I know you and I are keeping it kind of where mostly veteran-owned companies. It's just one of those things that, because it's not just for us, it's about giving back to our community. And at the end of the day, we are veterans, and that is, I do view myself as part of the veteran community, but I also view myself as someone that is outside of that as well. As I have to be with business and the work that I do. I have to create partnerships with the community at large, or else guess what, folks? Veterans don't get jobs. Yeah. Veterans don't do this. Veterans don't do that, because so that's my job, literally. And I think
you make a very
literally my job is community
separation there,
integration
and
of veterans.
I think we've kind of wave talked over during some of our previous shows, but it's really around this idea that, like, I'm a veteran as well, and I'm very proud of my service, and it is a big part of who I am, but it is not what defines me, right? And I think a lot of veterans struggle with that, because they've allowed their service to define everything about them. And then when they're trying to navigate a non-veteran environment, they feel very much ostracized, segregated, alone, vulnerable, and they don't know how to handle that. And I think it's a dangerous place for veterans to be. And I think a lot of it comes down to allowing your service and the time that you spent in the military to define every aspect of your being. And I think that's a dangerous thing to do. And I'm just keeping it real. A lot of veterans out there are going to hear that and they're going to get pissed, and I don't care. But I've
absolutely, it's horrific. I don't care either. I mean, there is a reason that we're successful in what we do.
Yes, let's just get into it. So and
it's because we don't limit ourselves.
We're Saturday, May 25th, so it's Memorial Day weekend. So Monday is Memorial Day, and I have it off. I'm sure you do as well.
Saturday,
and so I yesterday was Friday, and I know that a lot of people take Friday off in order to extend it into a 4-day weekend. It makes sense. I was actually contemplating doing it myself, but I chose not to. I'm going to save my vacation days till later this year. But so what I did is I brought a little table into work. So my main office is on the 3rd floor of this corporate building. And as soon as you get off the elevators on the 3rd floor, it dumps right into like the lobby of the company I work for. And I brought a small table into work. There's like a little kind of a lobby area, and brought in a white tablecloth, and a place setting, and a slice of lemon and some salt and a candle, battery operated candle, obviously, because we can't have open flame in the building. But anyway, a battery operated candle, and yep. And for those of you that are listening that are familiar with what I'm describing here, it was basically the setup.
See,
for
that's
what's
on
called
Gotta Love
a
Corporate
missing
America
man table, right? And you've seen those, Bennett, I'm sure, and they might even have some set up in the VA. And
Well, we have,
right,
yeah.
like
So
some places you go,
that's normally
is like
some of the
permanent
places I work.
fixture.
Obviously,
Like
we
it's
have
there,
them set up
all
constantly,
year
not just
long. And so I decided to set this up, and I, of course, had a little plastic stand
absolutely.
there that describes each of the elements and what they represent, what they symbolize. And I just set it up. I got to work early, like 6 a.m. in the morning before everyone else showed up. Yeah, yep. So I set it all up, and then I just kind of left it. I just went back. I sit on the second
That's
floor.
why you were at work already when I called
I
you.
just kind of forgot all about it. And throughout the day, and again, a lot of people weren't in on Friday, but people that were, throughout the day, I just got a lot of, people just knew that it was me for some reason. And it isn't because I advertise and I'm a veteran or whatever, but, the word spread that, that Eddie set it up, and it had some really good impact on some folks. So I was going upstairs to drop something off at somebody's office, and there was some people kind of standing out, kind of looking at it, and I walked by and they're like, "Hey, did you do this?" And I'm like, "Yep." And it was 3 ladies, and one of them has seen it before, but the other 2 had never even seen it before, never heard of it, didn't know what it was for, didn't know what it represented. And so I stood there and just explained it to them, and they were just, one of them you could tell was like really kind of impacting, and got a little kind of teary-eyed, and it was like, this is really deep. And I'm like, yeah. And one of the other ladies is like, this really opens my eyes to what this holiday weekend is really all about. A lot of people lose sight of what Memorial Day really stands for and what it really represents. We all just see it as a long weekend. It's the beginning of summer. It's barbecues. It's cookout. It's fun and time with friends and family, and that's really all it's kind of been every year. But this really opened my eyes and helped me realize that there is a bigger meaning behind this holiday. And I'm like, yep, that's essentially, that was my intent. That was the point. That's the whole point of this. And it isn't to make people feel guilty or bad about enjoying a long weekend with their family. That's not it at all. Let's also remember the sacrifices paid by so many to give us and afford us the ability to have these good times with our friends and family, right? Because they're the ones that made it possible. Without them and their sacrifice, we wouldn't be able to enjoy these barbecues and time with our family.
Yeah, absolutely. The other piece of, since this really about our new format is really, even though we used to do it was about education before, it's really about education now. And I want, just like you stated, like you educated those folks about what
correct.
the Fallen Comrade table is, right? Because that's another name for it, right? You got Missing Man, Fallen Comrade, whatever. But just a little education to folks that might not know exactly what Memorial Day is Memorial Day is supposed to be the literal remembrance of active duty military folks that died in combat. Not during their military service, right? Not you're a veteran and then you died later, even though that is kind of what it is. It's kind of a way that, it's kind of gotten wrapped into it, as well as people that have died that were veterans, right? And that's not specifically the I mean, if we're keeping it real, right? That's not what it's about. It's not about thanking people for their service, which it happens all the time. But again, roll with it. Don't get, who cares? It's about tipping a glass and saying a toast and remembering those that fell in combat, right? I mean, that's just what it is. And it's been co-opted into something different, which is, it's fine. It's the unofficial start of summer. Right? Thank God.
Right. Yeah.
Especially where Eddie and I live. Thank God. It fucking snowed last week. You know what I'm saying? Can it just end, please? Shit.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the people in Denver are screaming at me right now because I have a lot of family out there. Like, we got 7 inches last week. Right? So enough. I mark Memorial Day as the beginning of summer as well. And yes, I'm going to a barbecue on Sunday. But I also know that I, as the resident person that knows what the hell Memorial Day is actually about, we will stop and we will have a toast. Because I'm educating my friends and family, right?
And that's the thing. Is when I was
that's what this is about.
3 ladies,
it's about,
2 of them looked at me and said, "Oh,
you know what the hell I'm saying?"
And I'm like, "Yeah." and I shared with them a story of my time in Iraq, and I lost 2 soldiers in Iraq, and I shared with them a story of one of them, and they're like, "Oh, you served in Iraq?" I'm like, "Yeah." And so it's just one of those things where my service and the fact that I'm a veteran, I'm very, very proud of it. But it's something that, quite frankly, a lot of people don't really know about me. And I'm okay with that. It's not like I get offended when people don't know that I served my country. I don't get offended when people don't know that I was in the military. And it's not that I'm ashamed of my service, but at the same time, it's not what defines me. Like, people at work know me for the work that I do at work. Oh, go ahead.
No, it actually defines me. You actually got cut off. I'm sorry. Because, I was saying Skype did its thing and went whatever, so I didn't hear. And so on the actual recording, there's going to be some overlap because you went dead to me.
New format is we're not editing.
You went silent, so there's going to be some. Yeah.
Just
anyway,
have to live with it.
Damn.
So really quick, I wanted to...
Some of it's complete gibberish, which is half of what comes out of my mouth.
I wanted to share
a
little bit from a book that I read recently. And the book is called With the Old Breed. It's a New York Times best-selling book. And is authored by E.B. Sledge, Eugene Sledge. And part of his story is actually depicted in the HBO miniseries The Pacific. So it is an incredible miniseries. It is very different, but I definitely think that you couldn't have Band
not
of
as good as
Brothers
Band of Brothers, but damn good. Different.
Something about
different
Pacific,
though,
because it was. I mean, let's be honest. They're two. I mean, those are the 2 main theaters of war then during World War II, and those that fought in the Pacific and those that fought in the European theater. Even though it's the same war, 2 different theaters.
Yes.
Very, very different experiences. Yeah. I mean, the Germans and the Japanese, they were both our enemies. But
very different experiences.
You had to deal with them differently because they were, at the end of the day, two different enemies. And so this book, part of Eugene Sledge's story is depicted in the Pacific, as is many other really great stories like John Basilone, Medal of Honor recipient that also ended up dying in combat. But this particular book, I like this book because Sledge is, I don't know, man, his writing style, like he served, but he has a way of capturing his experiences in such a way that is compelling to read. And I'll be honest with you, Bennett, before I deployed, before I had experience in combat, I would watch movies and I would read books, and they had a different, they're different watching now and reading now than they were before. And it's because now I understand the struggle of war. I understand the respect of the enemy, at the same time hating them viciously with everything that you have in your makeup. I understand the loss and the brotherhood and the fear and the camaraderie and the suck factor, like everything all rolled into one. Now, I'm not saying that I because my 12 months in Iraq, I now know what it's like to be on Peleliu, right, or the beaches of Normandy.
Right, but at least you do have, and this is one of those things that I always give you,
right.
and I want you to understand, is you have a better understanding than 99% of the population. And again, I want veterans and guys like Eddie to have some pride about that and give yourself some fucking credit.
Yeah. Well, thank you, sir.
Yourself credit.
So I'm going to read.
All
I'm going to
right?
read the forward.
That's,
I'm going to read a couple of passages out of this book.
I'm not going to get up on a soapbox.
Well, I'll read the forward. Then let's discuss it, and then I'll read a couple passages, and we'll discuss it. Sound good? All right. So here it is, the forward. It was my privilege, and this is from. Let's see if I can get the actual name of this person. This is from Brigadier General Walter S. McKinley, U.S. Marine Corps Reserve, retired, Avery Island, Louisiana. So this is the forward from him. It was my privilege to assume command of the 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, 1st Marine Division, reinforced on 10 April 1944 during the final phase of the New Britain campaign. The New Britain was its second combat operation. Although we didn't know it at the time, 2 more campaigns lay before the battalion, Peleliu and Okinawa. Each of them would be of greater intensity and extract a greater cost than did the first 2. And when the division departed New Britain for a rest camp on Pavu, I don't even know how to say that island. Pavua. Sorry, good enough. Pavu. We'll call it Pavu. In the Russell Islands, we began comprehensive training for what was to become Operation Stalemate on Peleliu Island in the Peleliu Islands. That operation was to receive little publicity or recognition, but it was certainly to be one of the bloodiest and hardest fought of the Pacific War. Among the replacements who joined us during this period was a young Marine known as Sledgehammer, more properly listed as PFC EB Sledge. He was assigned to Company K under the command of Captain Andrew Haldane, one of the finest company commanders in the entire Corps. Sledgehammer has a PhD now and is a professor of biology at the University of Montevallo, Alabama, but he has never forgotten his experiences with Company K during the fights of Peleliu and Okinawa. Although I commanded the 3rd Battalion during its trained period for Peleliu, it was my fate, through the vicissitudes of seniority or the lack thereof, to be transferred to the regimental staff before we sailed for Peleliu. That was a source of deep regret on my part. So he's saying that, he basically was there to help train these guys up, and then right before they picked up and moved into Peleliu, he was reassigned, and basically felt regret for that ever since. And a lot of veterans, I talked to guys that got injured, significantly injured, really early on in our deployment, and they ended up going home and never came back, and they felt, even to this day, like extreme regret that they basically were pulled out of the action, away from their buddies, and left everyone over there to proceed without them. Yeah, and it's weird. These are the things you don't really consider. There was even some guys that were
tons of guilt.
You know how it is. There's usually somebody that stays home as part of rear detachment to kind of help coordinate things with the family readiness group and help with, in the event there is loss or casualties, you need somebody there to make arrangements. And so even those guys that were left back home as part of the rear detachment, I've talked to them and they felt extreme guilt over not being over in Iraq with us. So it's kind of the same thing. Let me finish here. It's almost like two more paragraphs here. It's customary for historical accounts to be written about military campaigns. It's not unusual for officers to write their personal narratives of such operations, but it's all too rare for an ordinary Marine infantryman to set down in print his own impressions of war. This is the man who actually closes with the enemy, who endures a plethora of privations along with the pain and all often death, who is the lowest common denominator when battle is joined. Sledgehammer Sledge was such a Marine. In this book, we see the war as he saw it himself. Anyone who has served in the ranks will find many situations analogous to his experiences recounted accurately in the rectal of fears, frustrations, and small triumphs. It's fascinating and intrusive reading. So he's basically saying, anyone that served will be able to reflect on this book written by this, where the rubber meets the road, Marine infantrymen, and will be able to associate or assimilate or reflect on their experiences, everything from the fears, frustrations, and small triumphs. I think this is an interesting forward by this Brigadier General, and I just wanted to read that to kind of open up this conversation, to kind of set the stage for a couple of other passages that we're going to hear directly from Eugene Sledge. And again, if you're wondering, this is from the book With the Old Breed. It's a New York Times bestseller book by Eugene Sledge. So have you read this book, Bennett, or are you just familiar with his story from the... Yeah. And it gets pretty graphic. So I don't know, do we put this in here?
But I've read parts of it.
Yeah. So now this is from...
Well, I mean, we always label our shows as explicit, right?
So and then we'll get into one more story.
That should cover it.
This book is an account of my World War II experience in training and in combat with Company K, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marine Regiment, 1st Marine Division during the Peleliu and Okinawa campaigns. It is not a history, and it is not my story alone. I have attempted, rather, to be the spokesman for my comrades, who were swept with me into the abyss of war. I hope they will approve of my efforts. I began writing this account immediately after Peleliu while we were in the rest camp on Pavuvu Island. I outlined the entire story with detailed notes as soon as I returned to civilian life, and I have written down certain episodes during the years since then. Mentally, I have gone over and over the details of these events, but I haven't been able to draw them all together and write them down until now. I have done extensive research with published and unpublished histories and documents pertaining to my division's role in Peleliu and Okinawa campaigns. I have been amazed at the vast difference in the perception of events recounted in these narratives as contrasted to my experience on the front line. And that's an important piece, I think, because even when I talk with my guys that were literally my driver, my gunner, in my truck, and we talk about experiences that we shared together, all three of us have different accounts of events. It is so extremely interesting. Like, we often talk about perspective from one's own foxhole, right? Everyone could be on part of the same battle. Everyone could be a part of the same conflict. Everyone could be fighting the same enemy or even shooting at the same combatant. But at the end of the day, everyone's experience is his own. And this is really what Eugene Sledge is saying here is accurate as he's been able to capture it after, reading through all the different accounts and experiences from others. Right, exactly. Yeah. Right.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
at the end of the day, this wasn't published until 1981.
Yeah.
So how many years, how many years
I
later?
haven't,
This was
I have yet to attend a
44,
reunion
right?
Since I've been out of the military.
Damn.
I've contemplated it. I've thought about it. Sometimes I haven't gone because it just wasn't at a place in my life where I was ready to face that. Other times I haven't gone just because it was just wasn't the right time financially or work something or whatever. But I almost have to wonder though if a lot of the allure of veterans coming together for these reunions, in large part, is probably because they're able to share their own accounts or recounts of their shared experiences and enjoy the narrative from a different person's perspective. You know what I'm saying? And it's the storytelling, and you could talk about, you got 5 guys there, they're all fought in the same, firefight, but you got 5 different stories. And I think when veterans get together and talk about this, I think that's why they do it. I think it's healing. I think it's probably entertaining. I think it's probably humorous, because as shitty as war is, it's the darkest of dark. It's the lightest of light. It's the worst of times you've ever experienced, and it's the best of times you'll ever experience, all rolled into one. And I know that's very hard to understand. It's hard to explain, but it doesn't make it any less true, So he goes on and says, back to the book, "My Pacific War experiences have haunted me, and it has been a burden to retain this story." Now listen to this. "But time heals, and the nightmares no longer wake me in the cold sweat with pounding heart and racing pulse. Now I can write this story, painful though it is to do so. In writing it, I am fulfilling an obligation I have long felt to my comrades in the 1st Marine Division, all of whom suffered so much for this country. All who served will long remember the horror they would rather forget. But they suffered and they did their duty, so a sheltered homeland can enjoy the peace that was purchased at such a high cost. We owe those Marines a profound debt of gratitude." Eugene B. Sledge. Now, that's exactly, in my mind, that's the culmination of what Memorial Day is, right? Let me read that again. "But they suffered and they did their duty, so a sheltered homeland can enjoy the peace that was purchased at such a high cost." That's what we do this weekend. We are enjoying our sheltered homeland. United States of America is enjoying this weekend, and doing so because those like Eugene and his friends that he served with on Peleliu and Okinawa, paid the ultimate sacrifice. So I'll pause there. We'll kind of open that up to discussion before I get into 2 more passages from his actual fight on Peleliu.
Yeah, I mean, I want for those that are listening that remember the feeling of 9/11, right? Of what happened on 9/11 in New York to put it any other way is a disservice. It's where our country was attacked, right? And it might have been from, 19 people, and you might contest the, accuracy of that story, but it doesn't matter. The perception is that we were attacked on that day, and I want everyone to remember. Everyone remembers where they were, obviously, if they were alive and or old enough to remember, right? Like, my kids have no idea what I'm talking about because they weren't even born yet, right? But everyone remembers that there's those defining moments in life where you can always remember where you were. People that lived through the JFK assassination, every one of them knows where they were, what they were doing, and where they were at when it happened. The same thing happens with Pearl Harbor. So what we're talking about with this book stems from that, because that was really the official entry of the United States into World War II. It was the attack on Pearl Harbor. That was the moment when the Band-Aid got ripped off and the sleeping giant was awoken, as, what was it, Admiral Toto had said, something like that. I don't know. But either way, he's like, I fear that we have awoken a sleeping giant. And America is, and he did, and they did. The next thing you know, shit got real for everyone. And so what I'm getting at with this, talking about this, is that the aftermath of that, though, not the fighting, not the whatever, is the camaraderie and the just love that you have for fellow Americans that everyone felt, for the most part. Everyone felt connected, right? That's a feeling that needs to be nourished, I guess, and remembered. And Memorial Day is one of those days where you can do that too. Instead of only focusing on bad, it's about focusing on good. It's about, we all know that feeling of being a part of something that's bigger than ourselves through moments like that. We get them more as veterans because we have a lot more of those trial by fire moments in our lives, right? The moments of adversity define what we do a lot, right? And you remember who you were with in boot camp, and you remember who you were with in battle, and you remember who you were with through that really shitty training exercise that you did at like NTC, because it just sucks, right? Or JRTC in Louisiana, because that's just what it is. So I guess what I'm getting at is that we all know this feeling of camaraderie. And this is my segue from civilians to veterans is everyone gets it. You just have to know that the other side gets it too. It's just different, right? Like, how many times have we heard people like, they don't know what it's like. They don't know what it's, yes, they do. We've all had situations. It might not be, but now we're comparing apples to oranges, except for, it's not about the apples and oranges. It's about that they're both fruit.
And I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that the days, weeks, and even months after 9/11, this country was in a different place. Like, no one gave a shit about race, color, creed, sex.
Not really.
Religion, political affiliation. We were all Americans, and we were all attacked, and we all felt that. And
yeah.
And it was, the feeling was of, I think we came together as a nation, and we put all that petty bullshit aside. And, and you're right, that feeling. And if you didn't feel that, in the short weeks and months after 9/11, if you didn't feel that, then you're just a heartless bitch.
Well, you have some problems,
issues,
actually.
Right?
So you probably have some.
Right.
You probably need a little therapy.
Yeah, and that's really what you're talking about. Is you're right. When veterans say, well, they don't get it. Yeah, anyone that, like you said, anyone that was alive and remembers where they were and the feeling after 9/11, that feeling of coming together as a nation, that feeling of coming together as one, with one purpose, with one cause, with one resolute, feeling of mourning and loss, but yet rage and hatred and anger and payback. All of those feelings, good and bad, and
what is it that the dichotomy of it all?
Exactly. The dichotomy of it all. That feeling, that's what veterans feel, and And that's what Memorial Day is for. And it's unfortunate that we have to identify one weekend a year, give it a holiday name, call it Memorial Day, in an effort to try to preserve that feeling and that remembrance. But then I'll take it one step further and say, but even then, we still often lose sight of what this holiday is really meant for, right?
Yes.
And that's
it's co-opted. It gets co-opted, which again, I don't get mad about it. Some people really do, though, or they walk around like an asshole and educate everyone like an asshole.
Again, this the dichotomy.
Don't thank me, right? Thank those ones that died.
Yeah.
Yeah. Come on,
it's like
bro.
It's like the ladies yesterday at work after I explained the table and what the meaning was behind it. One of them turned to me and said, "Well, thank you for your service." And I'm not going to be like, "Oh, well, don't thank me."
But when someone says that to you, what do you say?
You know what? And it's funny because I was just recently on business travel, and somebody had said that, and somebody next to me knew I was a veteran, and they were curious after the fact, like, how do you feel about that when somebody says thank you for your service? And they were generally just curious because they know people in their lives that are veterans, and they have different opinions about it. And because what I say when somebody says thank you for your service, I say you're welcome. It was my pleasure to serve my country.
Yes, me too.
And
I think we've talked about this.
And I don't say, oh well, I don't like take that and like turn it around or make them feel guilty about it, because a couple of things. Number one, it does take some people a lot of courage to walk up to a veteran and say thank you for your service. It really does. Some people can just do it off the cuff and it doesn't mean anything to them. Other people have to like work up to it. And like I've seen people like
like hem and haw.
I like walk through the mall, and I had my veteran hat on one. This is a couple years ago, but I had my veteran hat on. I was walking through the mall one day, and I totally forgot. When you wear a veteran hat, like I have a lot of different hats, so I often forget like which one I have on. But this day I had my my veteran hat on, Operation Iraqi Freedom 2 veteran hat with some pins on it and all that. So I'm walking through. I totally forgot that I had my hat on, and I'm walking and like once you've served in the military, you develop a heightened sense of like your surroundings, I think, and you pick out things that maybe some people don't. I think police officers probably experience this as well. So I'm walking around and this guy, I kind of catch this guy out the corner of my eye, and he's acting a little kind of suspicious, but he's at a distance.
Right.
He's at
a
a
froggy.
distance.
He's acting
a little
froggy.
But he's at a far enough distance where I'm just my spiny tinglies isn't raised too high.
Right.
And I'm just kind of walking around the mall, and then about 20 minutes later, and I've covered some good ground by this point in 20 minutes. And I kind of look at a reflection on some like storefront, and I kind of catch this guy, still at a distance, but I turn to look, and he would like quickly like act like he's looking at something.
Oh God.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, maybe it's just coincidence, right? And so I walk into a little bit, about 20 minutes later, I'm walking through the mall even further, and I turn, and this guy, I swear to God, this guy is now stalking me, right? Like it's clear to me that there's something to this thing, to this guy and me, and I didn't know what it was. And so I thought, what the hell, right? If shit's gonna go bad, might as well go bad. So I just kind of nonchalantly just kind of pretend like I'm, circling around, and I'm walking towards him. And he sees me walking towards me, and he gets like all fidgety and shit, like he doesn't know what to do, like run away or
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I finally get close enough where I'm kind of in now his space, right? I don't know, 3 or 4 feet probably. And he finally just kind of, you could tell he just kind of wipes his hands off on his pants, which is a good indicator that he's gonna come shake my hand. That's usually what a lot of people do, I find. And he kind of wipes his hands off on his pants, and he comes over to me, and he shakes my hand, and he goes, I noticed you. And I said, yeah, I noticed you noticing me. And I just thought I'd maybe come over here and say hi. And he goes, I just wanted to say, I saw your hat and I wanted to say thank you for your service. And he goes, I don't know why. I just really, really felt compelled to say that. And I didn't know how to.
You were
and
like, yeah, I know. You're stalking
I was like,
me.
I know. I was like, it's all good, man. And that's all it was, man. For probably an hour, this guy kind of tailed me around the mall, working up the courage to walk up and shake my hand and say thank you for your service. And it turns out that he didn't serve himself, obviously. I think anyone that did serve wouldn't have been so apprehensive about it. But it turns out his father had served in Vietnam. And he, I think his dad died or died shortly after or something. I didn't get the whole story, but there was this connection, and he just felt obligated to do that for his own reasons, right? And so a lot of veterans, it's important for you out there listening to know that sometimes when people do come up and say thank you for your service, like, lose your ego. Sometimes it's not about you.
Right.
Sometimes
absolutely.
it's about
most of the time it's not about them.
Right. It's about something that they're dealing with. There's some reason why they feel compelled to say thank you, and you're just happen to be the person in their vicinity that they can,
right,
come out to.
Just don't be an asshole, because it gives us all a bad name.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
if you give some weird snide remark, fuck you. I would literally tell you to go fuck yourself. Right. It makes me so mad when I get disgruntled veterans that are just assholes to people. Like, you motherfuckers.
Yeah.
Exactly. And yeah. I look at it as this. This is how I justified it and got it to a point in my brain where it was, you're giving these folks that have built up the courage enough because how many people do you walk up to and thank for their service, or walk up to after they gave a really good speech and tell them how you felt about it, tell them how you want to thank them for that? You motherfuckers don't do it. I know you don't. You might, but if you're one of those guys that's going to talk shit like that to somebody that comes up and says thank you for your service, then you're the asshole that's not going to do it, because your ego is so fucking gigantic that it's not going to matter. I don't want to scold people. I'm trying not to. But look at it as you're giving these folks a gift. And you're helping the veteran community while you're at it.
Right.
I mean, it really is, a gift to be like, you're welcome and it was my pleasure. That's what I say. Those are my exact words. You're very welcome and it was my pleasure.
Yep.
That's what I say. And it's burnt into me now. And I truly, you know what? I am truly grateful that I served my country. And it was my pleasure, regardless of all the bullshit and all of the turmoil and trauma and blood and guts. And, my story is still a quarter of some of these folks. I mean, my story, if we went down it and like measured dicks, is not Eddie's story. It's just not. It's not. But you know what I mean? But that's what it is. It's a dick measuring contest sometimes it gets into. But that's not what this is about. This is about give them that gift of a good experience with a veteran.
Yep.
And you know what? Especially if it's like kids and stuff, man. Just don't be a douchebag. Mm-hmm. So
and when that person asked me in this last company business trip that I went on, they asked me, do you feel awkward when somebody says thank you for your service? And I say, no, I don't. I said, I used to, because I didn't know how to answer the question. And I think a lot of times that's why veterans come off as assholes, because they just don't know how to answer it. And they're like, and they're trying to be so humble and shed any of that and deflect any of that gratitude off of them, because they feel that whatever. And when they do that, you're right. They just turn into an asshole. And I told this person, I said, well, when somebody says thank you for your service and I say you're welcome, it was my pleasure, I basically say the same thing. I'm able to come to terms with it, because in my mind, they're not just thanking me, they're thanking my soldiers that paid the ultimate sacrifice that never came home.
Yeah.
And I am saying, you're welcome on behalf of their sacrifice.
Absolutely.
And that's the way I view it in my mind, and that's how I'm able to justify not feeling, guilt around absorbing that gratitude from people. And let's be honest, some people just find it difficult to take a compliment or to accept gratitude and appreciation from somebody else. Why that is, I don't know. And I think we're going to get into that as this show progresses, because that's one of your mantras: trust, gratitude, and forgiveness. And it's one thing to have it within yourself, but it's a whole nother thing to accept it from somebody else. And sometimes that's the harder part, right?
Yeah,
sometimes
absolutely.
It is the harder part. And we're going to talk about that both ways, both having trust, gratitude, forgiveness within yourself, but also being able to receive and accept trust, gratitude, and forgiveness from other people in your life.
Absolutely.
So let me get into...
It goes so hand in hand.
There's one more forward here, and this one's by John A. Crown, Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Marine Corps. And this is what he says. This is a short forward, but this one is really impactful in my mind. The 1st Marine Division's assault on the Central Pacific island of Peleliu 37 years ago was, in the overall perspective of World War II, a relatively minor engagement. Can you imagine that? Peleliu, minor engagement.
And here's the other thing. A minor engagement that eight Marines were awarded the Medal of Honor for that battle. So to call an engagement that had 8 Medal of Honors come out of it, Jesus, really? I mean, but that's World War II for you. So because it's on a scale we can't even fathom.
Exactly.
When you have 45,000 Marines storming the beaches, damn, son, 45,000, because that's how many troops were on the American side were at that battle. 45,000 and change.
And to put that into perspective, if you go on Facebook or any social media site and you start researching, like they'll especially this time with Memorial Day weekend, like there's in huge city parks where they put like a flag for everyone that we lost during Iraqi freedom and enduring freedom. Whatever, 5,000 or whatever, 6,000. And they got like, you see it with flags, you see it with boots, right? But to see the sea of flags and the sea of boots representing those lost in Iraq and Afghanistan since the conflict started is a fraction of the losses obtained in World War II. Now, keep in mind, too, that the Iraq and Afghanistan war has been raging on now for over 15 years.
Do we have a number on casualties for the whole OIF, OEF, and OND?
I don't know the exact
numbers. I'm going to find that out while we're talking right now.
I'm going to say it's probably in the 5,000 or 6,000 range right at this point. And that's a lot. I'm not discrediting or taking anything away from that. I just want to bring it into perspective. That's a lot, but that was over a 15, 16-year period. The losses experienced during World War II in both the Pacific and the European conflict was seen over a 3-4 year period.
Right. Yeah, 5 maybe, but
right?
3. Some are yes, you're right.
And that's that is a ton of casualties in such a short period of time. So while you're looking that up, I'm going to finish this forward. So he says, back to the book, after a war is over, it's deceptively easy to determine which battles were essential and which could have gone unfought. Thus, in hindsight, Peleliu's contribution to the total victory was dubious. Moreover, World War II itself has faded into the mists with more immediate combat in Korea and Vietnam. To the men of the 1st Marine Division who made the assault on Peleliu, the youngest of whom are in their 50s today, again, this was 30 years after the war, there was nothing minor about it. For those who were there, it was a bloody, wearying, painful, and interminable engagement. For a single division operation, the losses were extraordinarily heavy. Eugene B. Sledge served in Company K, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines throughout the battle. I had the privilege of commanding Company India of the same battalion in the same period. His account awoke vivid memories which I had lain dormant for years. Don't read this personal narrative seeking the significance of the battle or of grand strategy. Rather, read it for what it is, intense combat as seen by an individual Marine rifleman. For those who have experienced battle elsewhere, the similarities will be obvious. And I think the biggest part there is, it was two parts there, is talking about after the war is over, it's deceptively easy to determine which battles were essential and which could have gone unfought. Peleliu clearly we paid a huge price on Peleliu, but it clearly was not strategic. After we didn't know that at the time. We knew that afterwards. It literally could have been unfought. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It made no impact to the outcome of the war. Thus, in hindsight, Peleliu's contribution to total victory was dubious, and that's got to be. Anyone that served there, anyone that knew anybody that died there, that's a huge pill to swallow, knowing that all of that essentially was really for nothing, right? Moreover, World War II itself, right, the entire war itself faded into the midst with more immediate combat in Korea and Vietnam. And you know what? And I hate to say this, but it's true. Mark my words. The sacrifice that we paid in Iraq and Afghanistan someday is going to be overshadowed by something even bigger, even greater, more horrific.
Yep. So, let me give you numbers.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, I'm going to give you 4 separate ones. So, since September 11th, now, one thing I want to reiterate since we talked about it earlier is 2,996 people died that day, right?
In the World Trade Center.
Yeah, in the World Trade Center, right.
Does that that include the planes and the Pentagon?
Yes. The Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and each of the 3 hijacked planes.
Okay.
All right, that's all. 2,996. Okay, so that's, in essence, that's the beginning of the war.
And now, is that all the firefighters and rescue people and everything, too?
Well, I mean, it's 2,996 is the casualties, right?
The total. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so then you have Operation Enduring Freedom, which is, the campaign includes casualties that occurred between October 7th, 2001 and December 31st, 2004. Okay? 2,343 military deaths and 4 civilians. A total of 20,095 injured in and around Afghanistan. Okay? But so that's over a 14-year period, basically. Then you have Operation Freedom Sentinel, which is part of the larger global war on terror. And this campaign includes casualties that occurred in Afghanistan immediately after OEF concluded, December 31st, 2014 to January 1st, 2015. The date there were to date, because there are 49 U.S. deaths and 268 wounded in the current military operations, right? So then you got OIF, which is in Iraq from 2003 to 2010. 4,424 U.S. deaths and 31,957 wounded, right? So it's pretty substantial. And then since you also, at the VA, also recognizes Operation New Dawn, so OND. You'll hear OIF, OEF, OND all the time, right? That's another 73 U.S. deaths and 295 wounded. So a decent amount, right? After all said and done, if you add those up, which I didn't, but you're somewhere around 10,000.
Killed, and then how many wounded?
Killed. And then wounded, you're probably talking, 60,000.
Right.
About 60,000.
Okay, so it is
but let's put this in perspective. Yeah. So this is over basically a 15-year period.
Correct.
Right? So let's put that in perspective, because on the Battle of Palau, a relatively minor battle in World War II, you had 2,336 killed and 8,450 wounded in like a 5-day period.
Yeah, right. That's horrific.
So that's, and these numbers are, and again, relatively small, but so that's just casualties on the American side.
Right.
The Japanese. The Japanese side, 10,695 killed.
Oh my God. And this is
So
an island.
literally 5 times. Yeah, 5 times. But see, that's the thing with the Japanese, is they almost died to a man, because there's 10,897 on the island, 10,695 killed, 202 captured.
So we're talking almost 13,000 dead human beings on this island. How do you even clean that up? How do you even?
And that was over. And that was over from 15 September to 27 November. So like 2 months.
And we're talking tropical islands, right? Where the humidity and the heat and the bugs and I can just imagine the smell and the disease and the blood and carnage, and just unimaginable.
Just
unimaginable.
a different animal.
And it's considered
of battle.
And they consider this an insignificant, in the total grand scheme of things, insignificant. That, to me, is
crazy.
I just can't even, you know what I mean? Unbelievable. So anyway, just to kind of put it into perspective what these guys dealt with. So I wanted to read a little bit from the book, D-1, and this is from the words of Eugene Sledge. And by all means, Bennett, if you hear anything in here,
let me give you one other perspective, because this book is also about Okinawa.
It is, correct.
And we know Okinawa was a different battle. All right. So, so here's the difference, and this is the difference casualty wise. Okay. Mm-hmm. From April 1st, 1945 to June 22nd, 1945. So about 2 months and a couple of weeks, right? Mm-hmm. Literally somewhere between 14, they don't even know the exact numbers, somewhere between 14,000 and 20,000 dead on the American side. But 12,520 killed in action. Right?
Wow. Yeah.
On the American side. Japanese, it's just, numbers go as high from about 77,000 all the way up to 110,000.
Wow. And this is just on Okinawa.
And somewhere between 40,000 estimates of civilian deaths. Estimates are between 150,000 to 300,000.
Holy Jesus.
So basically the city of Syracuse died. Civilian casualties died. That's just the civilians.
Right.
So these numbers are crazy. Like, people don't get it, though. Like, war is so bad.
And we're talking like wholesale slaughter of human beings.
And this is where we kind of go. We don't want to get on the soapbox because we want to kind of stay in there. But it's like, this is what happens when you don't have veterans in Congress.
That's true.
I'm just saying. Because so often people are so willing to just pull the trigger when they're not the ones actually pulling the trigger.
Yeah. You get somebody that's seen this horrific.
That's why we went into Korea the way we went into Korea, all apprehensive. Oh. And it's, again, Vietnam, the casualties in Vietnam are crazy as shit too.
Yeah.
So, we got a lot of remembering to do, America.
Yeah, we do.
And
we really do.
And the remembering is there for a reason. It's there to give you pause before you go kill those motherfuckers.
Yep.
Because there's a price to be paid for that.
Yeah.
And that's what Memorial Day is about. So finish the
because
thing.
that's the thing. Those who refuse to remember history are doomed to repeat it, right?
Absolutely. We know that. I mean, that's true for 3,000 years.
Right. And I think that's the important. I mean, why are we getting so dark in war and combat on Memorial Day? It's supposed to be happy and lighthearted, because if we don't remember the good and the bad, then we're doomed to repeat it, people. I mean, I don't think we'll ever do away with war and atrocity. I think there will always be conflict. There will always be war. There will always be death. There will always be, somebody's, child being laid to rest and giving their life for the comforts and freedom that we too often take for granted, unfortunately. And I just want to make sure that we all are aware of the sacrifices paid. Right?
And I want people to understand that they live in a unique place.
Yes.
And we always hear there's something like 106 free countries throughout the world.
Yeah.
Technically free, right? But none of them are this free. And people can of different colors and religions they're of course this is from my perspective, and I try to see things from others' perspectives as well. Like, there's people of color that feel oppressed. I'm sympathetic to that. I understand it. I've never gotten the full aspect of that, I'm sure, but I sympathize. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's certain religions in our country that feel oppressed, and that's fine. I get it. I get the emotion part of it. But what I want people to do is take a step back and look at what we have here, right? Mm-hmm. There's in America, what we truly have here, and what truly affects your daily life, and how you can fix that, right?
Yeah.
And none of that is through violence. None of that is through all this craziness. I guess what I'm trying to say, especially in this episode, is knock it off, man. Like, we got to figure out a way to live together. It's because you and I had this conversation about the uproar about that Hillary comment, which I don't want to go into the whole back story on that, but we divide ourselves. Knock it off. You don't need to be divided as a country right now. And use the tools given to us in days like Memorial Day to remember what's really important.
Yeah.
And that regardless of whether you like them or not, people have shed blood to give you this freedom.
Yeah. You don't have to agree with it.
You don't have to agree with it, but
it doesn't make it any less true.
It doesn't make it any less true that you're living in a freer society because of that. And again, I understand that there's outliers. There's people that are oppressed. There's entire races that are, oppressed. But at the end of the day, I'm sorry for that. And I wish it wasn't that way, Mm-hmm. And if I could change it with a failed magic wanding, I would. But at the end of the day, there's places that are so much worse, that just have a little gratitude, even to your ancestors that have fought. God, every race, color, creed, and religion has had people die for that cause. So remember them. Remember all that stuff, because they've all fought for this country in one form or fashion.
Yep.
Bottom line. So.
Absolutely.
Oh, Jesus.
You got a little deep.
Yeah, because I don't think in general, it might hurt your brain, but these are the ways, if you don't think this way from time to time, you lose your humanity. Especially with social media and the way that it's so easy to just troll, and it's so easy to be like, that dude's a fucking loser and whatever. But you know what? Flip the script from time to time and look at the other guy's point of view. Of course he's going to be pissed.
Yeah.
So stop. Like, that's what being human is about. You're not a fucking animal. I mean, we're animals, but we're not completely animals, Yeah. Use the gift that's been given to you in your giant brain to actually rationally think, and your life might get easier. Just saying.
And that's really what the show is about. Change your point of view, because oftentimes it's so easy to get caught up in what we think to be true or what we believe to be right, that we lose sight of other perspectives. And oftentimes, if you're open to a different perspective, you're gonna see things not only from a different perspective, but your opinions may change, your beliefs may change, your opinions may alter. And you know what? In my mind, I think that's the sign of intelligence, is someone that is able and willing to be their minds and their opinions be changed, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I think people that toe the line on everything all the time and unwilling to see things from different perspectives, unwilling to hear different opinions, unwilling to ask themselves what else could that mean, I think those people are selling themselves short. I think those people aren't as fulfilled in life. I think those people are short-sighted and miss out on a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, educate yourself, or allow yourself to be educated.
Yeah.
At the end of that, it still doesn't mean that you have to agree, but at least you have actual knowledge to base that upon, instead of ignorance.
Absolutely.
Because what is the quote? Yeah. Jesus Christ, since we're so good about quotes, and of course I can't remember it. I wish I could, but it's basically their surmising is, willful ignorance is the worst thing basically in the world. And if you're not going to step up to be educated, and you're just going to walk through life being willfully ignorant, then you're a danger to yourself and society, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people, they take things at face value and they just believe the first thing that they hear, because it takes too much energy to formulate your own opinion.
Because it's easy.
It's lazy.
It's an easy button, Staples.
I saw somebody posted on Facebook yesterday a picture of some cops that had a 12-year-old boy on his knees with a bag over his head, right? And the post was like, these cops, who's going to hold these cops accountable, arresting this 12-year-old boy and putting a bag over his head. And I looked at the picture, and I immediately recognized what it was. It was a spit hood. And as a corrections officer, I've worked with those. I've used those before. And what it is, it's a mesh bag that is really, really fine mesh. So you put it over your head. You can see through it, and you can breathe through it.
Correct.
Just like you didn't have it on. The only thing that did, though, is it prevented. So if you got an inmate or somebody that's being belligerent, they literally, I've been spat on before by inmates.
Right.
Like through the cell door or whatever. So we'll restrain them and put a spit hood over their head to protect ourselves, because a lot of diseases are spread through saliva. And you know what? It just sucks to get spit in your face. Yeah, it does.
I mean, come on. Nobody wants to get their spit. Oh, no. Hey, man, come on. Spit in my face.
Right.
Nobody wants that shit.
Yeah. And if this 12-year-old boy is running around spitting in cops' faces, do you blame them for putting a spit hood over his head?
No, because if you were that cop, you sure as hell wouldn't want spit in your face. Unless, what are you going to run up there and open your mouth? Because, come on, baby.
Yeah.
Spit.
And I just responded to the
said no one ever. Hey, come spit in my face. Said no one ever.
Aw, open up.
Unless you're some weird, kinky dude that likes to get puked on or something. I mean, bro, nobody's asking for the spit. Thanks.
And that's what I comment on the post. I'm like, okay, as a corrections officer, I've used this many times. It's a spit hood. You could see through it, you could breathe through it, just like you didn't have it on, and it stops.
It's just a spit hood.
The person from spitting, and the spit hits the inside of the hood and runs
then
down
it
their
runs.
chest,
then
right?
they're spitting on themselves. So
exactly.
It's awesome.
And I just thought you should, and that's what I put in the post. I thought you all should know what this is, and so you could be more informed before you formulate an opinion about this article. Like, don't just look at it at face value. Like, whoever wrote the article was implying that the cop was putting like a Walmart bag over this kid's head and like suffocating him, right?
Right.
That's totally not what was happening. But,
yeah, and so that was kind of what started this whole conversation. And I'm sorry we actually went down a rabbit hole, but that's going to happen on this show. Is the what started me down this hole was the Hillary Clinton saying grotesque on Twitter to a report from the New York Times that says Trump may release or may pardon war criminals, right? And they had a picture of Chief Warrant Officer Eddie Gallagher on the picture, right? On the article. The thing is that Eddie Gallagher is not a convicted war criminal. Bottom line. Right. But you, by posting that picture, and see, this is done by both sides of the aisle, sure. Both sides of the political spectrum, and it's bullshit. So it's just but unfortunately, perception's reality, right? Mm-hmm. Unless you actually educate yourself. So Eddie Gallagher is not a convicted war criminal. I mean, he's been accused of war crime, right? But he's not convicted. So in turn, you're saying by putting that headline with his name, that's what I was posting, but it was pissing me off because Hillary says grotesque, right? And yeah. So here's the thing though. Now, because of the way that I think now, I know exactly what her rebuttal is to people going, oh, they're not war criminals. They're just doing their jobs, blah, blah, blah. And what I know, and I saw it the other day, the rebuttal, like not the apology, because she didn't apologize, but the rebuttal to that out there was, I wasn't talking about them. I was talking about Trump. So it's such a game that's played, right?
It is a game.
Knock it off.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Both sides play it. It's like, it's this institutionalized outrage culture, right? So you have the outrage, and then you have the competitive victimhood shit that gets to, and veterans are really good at playing that game. You want to get some hate mail for us? Hey, veterans, a lot of times we're really good at playing the competitive victimhood game. I'm asking you to knock it off. It's the dick measuring. If you don't understand competitive victimhood, it's us standing there measuring our dicks saying, well, I did this or I did that. And it's good to have those conversations. But just because I'm a grunt and you're a pogue doesn't make your service any less important.
Yeah.
So anyway, god damn, we're going down a rabbit hole.
No, but unfortunately, these are grown adults running our country. That scares the hell out of me.
Yeah.
More than anything.
I mean, besides the fact that if you've got Trump and you have Hillary and you're looking at them going, this is the best we have. This is this is the best two folks that we have at this point in time to represent our country is scary. It's scary. But again, that's the system, right? So I have faith in that to an extent.
You have to.
And you know what? Again, how much does it really affect our lives?
None.
Very little. Very little. No, I'm saying very little. And again, That's like, what do we really focus on? What's our priorities? It's usually probably friends, family, and community, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who's president.
Right.
They're all going to make the same dumbass decisions that are all filtered down through the state and then your local community. And, the only thing that really affects your life per se, for the most part, is how many taxes you're charged, right?
Yep.
How much taxes you're charged by your municipality. And all that stuff that happens at the local level. And most people can't even tell you who their mayor is.
Yeah.
Most people can't even tell you who's on their board, the board of education, with their children, because we're worried about Hillary and Trump.
Yes.
We're worried about that shit,
yes.
but yet we don't know who the fuck is making the decisions for our school board, for the children, your children in those schools. God, civil discourse, folks.
And that's the thing, man, is local politics impact your life way more than they do at the national level. But everyone
90% more.
Yeah, absolutely. Who's your selectman, Bennett? Do you know?
I do, actually. Or now it's called different things in different places. So you say selectman. What do you mean by that?
Well, like the lowest level for your town or community, like the first level of hierarchy, I guess, in the local government.
So that would be the
Yeah, because you got weird things.
Oh, dude, you don't even. Again, that's a whole nother
villages
show. That's a whole nother show. So I actually have layers. And off the top of my head, that's a difficult situation, because now you have to look at what are we talking about? Village? Are we talking about towns? So that's not as good. But the Board of Ed, I can tell you who they are and who. Well, it helps that my wife works there too. She doesn't work at the Board of Ed, but she works in the school system. I can tell you who is there, and they're not all good. And I'm not even. That was more of a facetious question. I'm not really looking for an answer. I'm making a point that so many people out there don't even know, who their local government officials are that impact them the most in, like you said, in school board decisions, in paving roads that go through the front of your house that's full of potholes, that decide on, the amount of taxes and property taxes and other initiatives. I mean, there's so many things that impact our lives way more than whatever, Hillary or Donald Trump are ever going to do. I mean, unless they reach down deep and do something that's going to really impact us, like, I don't know, reduce, overall healthcare costs, or reduce the cost of the price of gallons of gas per gallon, or, something. Yeah.
I mean, to be honest with you, how many decisions have been made at the national level since Trump's been president has really impacted your life, individually.
Right.
I mean, I don't know about you, but, wall, no wall, have no impact on me whatsoever. It just doesn't.
Well, I mean,
but I don't live in Texas, so maybe,
I'm
people, open, right? I'm open.
I'm like, go ahead, sorry.
No,
we had one of those moments. We had one of those moments again where you weren't coming through.
Call it a Skype moment?
Yeah, Skype moment.
Yeah.
But so, like, I have friends in the Border Patrol, and I have friends that, and again, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one, right?
Sure.
So the consensus opinion that I've heard from my friends that are in the immigration business, right, or the enforcement of immigration laws business, there's Border Patrol, there's ICE, there's all these things. The consensus that I've heard is that a wall would help, but it's not going to stop it.
Yeah. Nope.
And I don't, I mean, why else do we have, bottom line is this. And I look at the people that try to make these decisions and force them upon people. It's like, why do you have a fence around your yard then? because
Yeah.
because fences and walls make good neighbors, right?
Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
It's a delineation of a border. That's all that it is. It's not going to stop it. It's not going to, but it will make. I mean, if you come against a wall, it's not like, what do? You go over it, you go around it, or you go through it or under it, right?
Yeah.
And there's always going to be people that find their way around them.
Exactly.
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't have it. Come on. I really don't have an opinion either one way or another, other than common sense.
Yep. I agree.
And the common sense is that, in my opinion.
And I don't have an opinion one way or the other either.
Right.
And that's the thing is, I choose to free my mind of burdening myself with the jackassery.
Right. But I also look at the billions of dollars that would be spent on a wall.
Yeah.
And I also say, man, we got kids that are starving.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And the greatest country in the world. And believe me, I'm not another I'm not a God bless America and no one else person.
Yeah, right.
I'm not. But we have some freaking issues, that we could probably spend $1 billion on that might be better spent doing certain things.
Yeah, I'm thinking so too. Absolutely.
So, yeah. I mean, come on. I don't know. I mean, we are a nation of immigrants.
That's true.
I went through this with, family members of mine the other night.
Yeah.
And I'm like, listen, for you to say that you can't let these people in or people in, yeah, we want to do it legally. Well, then make that easier. Make it so it's doable.
Yeah.
Because it's hard right now, and there's nothing wrong with hard. It makes you vested in the process, right? I get it.
How I saw,
but let's instead of doing new shit, let's actually
they're trying to get everyone
enforce the laws that are on the books
about this illegal immigrant that was being deported back to Mexico. His wife and his wife and his kids are all U.S. citizens.
Yeah.
But he was getting deported, right? And now get this, right? And the argument they were making was that he's been in the United States for like 35 years and, got married, had kids, and everyone in his family are all legalized or, national citizens. And they're deporting him after 35 years. And my argument is this bitch had 35 years to get his citizenship. like what was he doing? I don't, you know what I mean?
Like what are you doing? But I also see it from the other side too and say, let's use some common fucking sense.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah.
And there's nothing wrong. I really don't have a problem with this idea of amnesty.
Right.
If there's anyone that if he's not a felon, not a convicted felon, and isn't raping and pillaging our landscape, he's been here for 35 years. He's obviously been a contributing member to society, more than likely. I don't know the case, but if you look at it and he's got the family and he's this and that and the other thing, come on, use some common sense. I mean, the fact that we use this, we grind people down with the wheel of bureaucracy is just fucking exhausting too. Yes. There's a point where it's like, dude, common sense says this guy is a contributing member of society. Make him a citizen. But allow him to go through the process. Allow him to go through the classes. Allow him to learn the history. Allow him to do all this stuff, right? And then you put some burden upon him.
Yes, right.
So I understand your thing, but again, not so easy, because here's the thing. He goes and starts to become a citizen. If he's here illegally, he's getting deported first.
Absolutely.
So I understand it. So again, let's not do that. That's just fucking stupid. So it is it's a dichotomy, because then you have the other side of this is like, where do you draw that line? And again, I say use common sense and shut up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because, there's got to be a point when you say enough is enough, right? I understand that there's points when you draw lines in the sand, but I've never been a big fan of that.
Right.
Because you always make an ass out of yourself. Both parties in Congress do it daily. Both freaking presidents do it. I mean, I can go into that. That's a whole nother thing, but we don't really, I'm not going to do that. So
definitely a whole nother show for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Because now we're getting into political process and most of it is fucking stupid. Again,
Yeah.
And yes, I do have better solutions. I do. So that's the other thing. So we want to, with this new format, we want to be a little polarizing.
Yeah, we're not always going to
in our opinions, and we're not always going to agree either. And that's something that I like, and we want to set an example of civil discourse. And you know what? That includes swearing and calling people stupid.
So you mean
you just can't get offended.
You mean
by
it's okay that two
pussy.
people can actually disagree about something and still get along? Holy are you sure?
It's weird. Yeah, I'm positive.
Yeah. I know I'm being very facetious there, but it's
I know. But shit, it's really funny. Like people get all mad and like want to kill people. Like, dude, shut up.
Exactly.
I just don't get it.
Yeah, man. So, Memorial Day.
Your mama's got a wooden leg with a kickstand. Whatever. I'm just kidding. Yeah, Memorial
Day. And here's the thing about before we get back into Memorial Day and before we close down the show. I think everyone has heard it, right? You are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and I think if the 5 people you spend the most time with all have the same thoughts and all have the same ideas and all have the same opinions and all have the same beliefs, all have the same everything, I think you're limiting yourself, right, to being open to alternate perspectives, and I think you're limiting yourself. I think it's important that you surround yourself with people that are, that you get along with, yes, but maybe don't always agree with you. And it's okay. It's okay that somebody doesn't agree with you. It's okay that you don't agree with everyone else. Like, why is it that everyone feels like you have to agree with me or you're wrong? Like, being right or wrong and you agreeing to me are mutually exclusive, I think. I don't think they're it just frustrates. That's what frustrates me the most, more than anything, is you can have, it's a dichotomy. You can have your own beliefs and you can be right, and somebody else can have a differing belief and they could also be right. Right? It's not a black or white thing. It's not a I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right. It's I believe one thing, you believe something different.
Or you say that, but it's actually what you should say is it shouldn't be that way. But it is that way.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. Yes. So, anyway. Mr. Eugene Sledge. I'm going to read 2 more passages here, and then we'll kind of talk about it, and then get your thoughts, Bennett, and then we'll close it down. D-1 for those that may not know what that means. It's literally the day before they're about to advance onto Peleliu. After evening chow, and oh, by the way, yes, they do serve really good chow the day before an attack or an advancement or an invasion.
Usually,
if they have it, right? Yeah. He was in the Marines, so he probably got like a biscuit or something.
Yeah, a hardtack. They pulled that shit out from the Civil War.
Yeah. After evening chow on 14 September 1944, a buddy and I leaned against the rail of an LST 661 and talked about what we would do after the war. I tried to appear unconcerned about the next day, and he did too. We have fooled each other and ourselves a little, but not too much. As the sun disappeared below the horizon and its glare no longer reflected off of the glassy sea, I thought of how beautiful the sunsets always were in the Pacific. They were even more beautiful than over Mobile Bay. Suddenly, a thought hit me like a thunderbolt. Would I live to see the sunset tomorrow? My knees nearly buckled as panic swept over me. I squeezed the railing and tried to appear interested in our conversation. And I wanted to read that because I've experienced this in Iraq. Iraq is a very desolate place. It's a very, the human feces, standing waters of just yuck, nastiness, dead animals on the side of the road, trash everywhere, electricity's not working, there's no real running water. It's like an awful place. But like there's also like palm trees that cast against a very bright sunset is awe-inspiring. And so this dichotomy of beauty and horrific country, it was very unique. It was a very odd experience to look left and see just a trash heap, and look right and see like the most beautiful sunset you've ever seen in your life. And then
absolutely.
Then the thought of, oh my God, is this the last time I'm ever going to see that? Am I going to be around tomorrow? And there's that sweeping fear that just comes over you all at once. Been there, done that. I read this and I was like, he could have written this little paragraph here just for me, and that's why I wanted to kind of read that one. So now I'm gonna,
and that's why they say it's this story that he tells is one of the best firsthand accounts of combat ever written.
Yeah, because you could read other accounts of the war in the perspective of, tacticians and strategists and generals.
Yeah, but not in a first person.
Yeah, they're not going to be talking about leaning up against an LSST 661, talking with a buddy, and basically shooting a shit and kidding each other about their fears of what's lies ahead the next day, right? So here it is, D-Day, the day that they're actually going to move. 15 September 1944. I seem to have slept only a short time when an NCO, oh God, NCOs, right? An NCO came into the compartment saying, "Okay, you guys, hit the deck." I felt the ship had slowed and almost stopped. If only I could hold back the heads of the clock, I thought. It was pitch dark with no lights topside. We tumbled out, dressed and shaved and got ready for chow. Steaks and eggs, a 1st Marine Division tradition honoring a culinary combination learned from the Australians. Neither the steak nor eggs was very palatable, though. My stomach was tied in knots. Back in my compartment, a particular problem had developed. Haney, who had become one of the first to return from chow about 45 minutes earlier, had ensconced himself on the seat of one of the 2 toilets. So he basically, I think they got the shits, based on what they're saying right here. The small head on one side of our compartment. There he sat, dungaree trousers down to his knees, his beloved leggings laced neatly over his boondockers, grinning and talking calmly to himself while smoking a cigarette. Nervous Marines lined up using the other toilet one after another. Some men had been to the head on the other side of the compartment, while others, in the desperation, dashed off to the heads to other troop compartments. The facilities in our compartment normally were adequate, but D-Day morning found us all nervous, tense, and afraid. The veterans already knew what was to find out. During periods of intense fighting, a man might not have the opportunity to eat or sleep, much less move his bowels. And that's the thing that people don't consider. You're out there in the heat of battle, and you got to take a shit or you got to piss. Like, what do? You stand up, call ceasefire, be like, time out, I got to go take a shit. Like, that doesn't happen, man. Like, a lot of people don't even think about the, human function, bodily function in combat that could last, hours and days and even weeks. All of the men grumbled and scowled at Haney, but because he was the gunnery sergeant, no one dared suggest he hurry. With the characteristic detachment, Haney ignored us, remained unhurried, and left when he pleased. So basically, he is sitting on the shitter, enjoying, just taking his time, and no one's gonna basically tell him to get off. Like, you're done, Sart. You're done, Gunny. My turn. Nope, he's just gonna sit there, smoke his cigarette, just a shit-eating grin on his face. The first light of dawn just appearing as I left my gear on the bunk, all squared away and ready to put on, and went out into the main deck. All the men were talking quietly, smoking, and looking toward the island. I found Snafu, and we know what Snafu is, right? Do you know?
Oh, yes.
Do you want to explain that to our readers, or to our listeners? Snafu.
No, I don't.
Okay, we'll let them look it up. And stayed close by him. He was the gunner on our mortar, so we stuck together. He was also a Gloucester veteran, and I felt more secure around veterans. They knew what to expect. He pulled out a pack of cigarettes and drawled, "Have a smoke, Sledgehammer?" "No thanks, Snafu. I've told you a million times I don't smoke." "I'll bet you 2 bits, Sledgehammer, that before this day is over, you'll be smoking the hell out of every cigarette you can get your hands on." I just gave him a sickly grin, and we looked toward the island. The sun was just coming up, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky, and the sea was calm, and a gentle breeze blew. The ship's bell rang, and over the squawk box came, "Get your gear on and stand by." Snafu and I hurried to our bunks.
Snafu. Yeah. So they actually called the guy Snafu. That was his actual. Oh my God. All right, folks. I'm sorry. I have to say it then. Snafu is an acronym, and it means situation. Is it situation normal?
Yeah.
So the SN is situation normal.
All fucked up.
All fucked up. That's what it means. I wanted you to go look at it yourself, but well, I guess I can't help myself. What changed it for me is that they actually called the guy.
Yeah, they
Snafu.
called him Snafu. Like, he must have been
instead of oh, this is a snafu, or this is a
like, he must have been tore up from the floor up. This guy.
Fuck, his actual nickname became Snafu.
And nicknames are very common in the military. If we don't know, right?
But that's an amazing one. Holy hell.
So Snafu and I hurried to our bunks, nodding and speaking to other grim-faced buddies who were rushing to get their gear. In the crowded compartment, we helped each other with our packs, straightened shoulder straps, and buckled our cartridge belts. Generals and admirals might worry about maps and tons of supplies, but my main concern at the moment was how my pack straps felt and whether my boondockers were comfortable. The next bell rang. Snafu picked up 45 pounds of...
the shit they called things in those days.
I do boondockers. The next bell rang. Snafu picked up 45 pounds of mortars and slung the carrying strap over his shoulders. I slung the carbine over one shoulder and a heavy ammo bag over the other. We filed down the ladder to the tank deck where the NCO directed us to climb aboard an Amtrak. My knees got weak, and I saw that this wasn't the newer model with the tailgate ramp for the troop exit in which we had practiced. This meant that once the Amtrak was on the beach, we'd have to jump over the high sides, exposed much more to enemy fire. I was too scared and excited to say much, but some of the guys grumbled about it. The ship's bow doors opened and the ramps went down. All of the tractor's engines roared and spewed out fumes. Exhaust fans whirled above us. Glaring daylight streamed into the tank deck through the open bow of the ship as the first Amtrak started out and clattered down the sloping ramp. Our machine started with a jerk, and we held onto the sides to each other. The Amtrak's treads ground and scraped against the iron ridges on the ramp, and then it floated freely and settled into the water like a big duck. Around us roared the voices of ships, guns, engaged in a pre-assault bombardment of Peleliu's beaches and defensive positions. The Marine Corps had trained us, new men, until we were wielded with veterans into thoroughly disciplined combat division. Now the force of events unleashed on that 2-mile by 6-mile piece of unfriendly coral rock which carried us forward unrelentingly, each to his individual fate. Everything my life had been before and has been after pales in the light of that awesome moment when my Amtrak started and amid a thunderous bombardment towards the flaming, smoke-shrouded beach for the assault on Peleliu. And that's like the pivotal moment that he realized that life before, like it was like essentially it's the hinge of what would define the rest of his life. Everything before this moment was before Peleliu, and his life, if however long it lasted, at the time he didn't know, everything after that moment was his life after Peleliu. And I think that is a lot of what veterans that have served experience. Is like, for me, there's my life before Iraq, and then there's my life after. And even though I've actually been out of the military longer than I was in, that 1 year in Iraq had such a profound impact on me that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. It's very similar to 9/11 we mentioned earlier, right?
It's a defining
moment. There's the United States pre 9/11, and then there's the United States post, and those two worlds are vastly different and will never be the same, right? So I'm not gonna read anymore. This is an incredible book. I didn't even get into, the carnage that he would face on Peleliu and then later in Okinawa, but highly recommend With the Old Breed by Eugene Sledge. Incredible. And again, people are like, oh yeah, I don't need to read a book. I saw The Pacific. The Pacific is a culmination of many stories combined together. And Eugene Sledge is in the Pacific, don't get me wrong, but he's kind of peppered in, sprinkled in. He is one of the main characters of the Pacific, but they really don't touch or go into as great of detail of his experiences on Peleliu and Okinawa as his book does. So highly recommend getting the book. Great book. Well, happy Memorial Day. And a lot of people say, and thank you and a lot of people are like, why do you say happy Memorial Day? There's nothing happy about remembering. It's like, again, you're being an asshole, right? What does this represent? Remember that. It represents the freedom and enjoyment and happiness we have with our family because of the price paid by so many before us. And will continue to pay for us in the future, unfortunately, but that is the cost of freedom. So with that, I've got nothing else.
So I think we can pretty much wrap it up. Yeah, I've got one last thing to say. Two things, actually, which you've touched on: the trust, gratitude, and forgiveness. We'll hear about this a lot, right, over the next however long we decide to do this for this new iteration. But something I want everyone to always think of as they're walking through life day to day and dealing with people, right, is we all hold, and you can use whatever analogy you want, but the analogies that I use are, we all hold a beast, an angel, and a madman inside of us. You get to choose who you want to be. And that can dictate how you walk through life and deal with other people. Bottom line. Does that make sense?
Yeah, man, that's deep. And sometimes you've got to invoke one or versus the other given certain circumstances. But at the end of the day, it's within your control and within your power to choose and to decide who to bring forth, right?
Right. It should be under your control. And sometimes it's not, but that's the rub, right?
Exactly.
And that's what we strive to do, is to be able to control those aspects of our being and ourselves. And I think if people, instead of just living life by the feels, right? It feels good, I'm going to do it, or this is easy, so I'm going to do it. I think sometimes you need to check yourself and actually stop, and before you have verbal diarrhea.
I agree.
And just, I'm just trying to kumbaya and get everyone to treat each other better. Bottom line. I mean, this is one of my tenets in life, is trying to be a calm within a storm of crazy. And that's why I'm here. And welcome back to Change Your POV podcast.
Yeah, man. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad you're back. I'm glad we're all back. And I'm interested to see where these discussions take us.
No shit. Because I think if we've seen on this episode of going on 2.5 hours, we're all over the place. Yeah, and that's okay. Because that's how conversations go.
Right. No.
Right? You don't just freaking, this is the topic and this is all we're talking about. But we have a general framework, so it's fucking awesome and fun. And if no one else listens, at least you and I have had great conversations.
Absolutely. We're building a legacy. At some point in our life, we are now no longer going to be on this earth, and this will be carried on. Maybe my grandchildren will listen to this and gain some inspiration or take a lesson away from it. And that's the way I see this. Is it's a way for me to build my legacy and to give and to share and do something bigger than myself. Am I an old wise man? No, but I've got beliefs and I have experiences and I have opinions, and I don't see the anything wrong with sharing those. And if more than that, if I can open other people's mind and eyes to see things differently than they've been able to see them in the past, then I've succeeded. That's my goal in this show, is helping people change their point of view, change their perspective, because at the end of the day, perspective is the vantage point of success, right?
Yes, and before we get scolded, we understand that point of view and perspective are two separate things.
That is true. That is correct.
Yeah, and we can define that another time. But
so there you have it. Change your point of view. Have a great Memorial weekend.
Yeah, man.